Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Revit Pure Live. I am Nicolas Catellier, an architect, a BIM specialist, and the founder of the website revitpure.com. First time streaming in a while, so if there's any sound issue whatsoever, please let me know. Everything seems to be working fine. Already some folks in the chat, and I always like to start by asking where you guys are from. Already some people answered. Somebody, Jean from France at 2 a.m. Watching the show. Thanks for staying up late and watching. Pretty excited about it. And I see a few names I recognize in the chat as well. So welcome to everybody. Revit Pure Live is a show where we help you become a better Revit user. Sometimes the show is all by myself, but sometimes like today I have guests on the show. And before we move on with the guests, just a couple of quick announcements. So the third season of Revit Pure Live, right now this is more of a one-off episode, special holidays episode. But season 3 will start once again in January 5th with Bill Carney. And we're going to be talking about interior design. The name of the episode will be Automating Interior Design. We'll be using Dynamo to automate some boring tasks to quickly create plans for interior design in Revit. So that should be a lot of fun. And a lot of amazing guests have already been booked for the next season. So stay tuned early next year. And there are no sponsors for this episode, but I wanted to quickly mention I will be a judge for the upcoming BIM Smith Winter Wonderland Holiday Revit Family. So I think it's the second year in a row that BIM Smith are organizing this competition. And I will be a judge along with Benjamin Glunz, the CEO of BIM Smith, and with Paul Oman, which is pretty well known in the BIM world. And you can see some of the families that have been modeled last year. You can recognize Elsa from Frozen here. So pretty amazing family. Just type in BIM Smith Winter Wonderland Holiday Family in Google and you should find it. And later on, I will add the link in the description as well. So that's it. No sponsor. Going straight to Gavin. How are you doing, Gavin?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me on board for the end of year wrap up. And, it looks like a very exciting family competition too. And good to see lots of people from around the world tuning in, a couple of Australians, and I even saw a expat in Vancouver. So really good distribution around the world. But yeah, great to be here and looking forward to our chat. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for accepting the invitation. Since this is a special happy hour episode, I've got my little drink ready. I don't know what this is. Actually, it's kind of it's like a multicolored beer. This is from a local brewery here. Cool. The description is pretty complicated, so I have no idea what I'm drinking. But regardless, happy to be with you and happy to be with everyone watching in the chat.
Happy hour. Yeah, happy year, happy hour. Yeah, I've got a whiskey on my side. It's called a Nikia. It's one of my go-tos. It's a Japanese whiskey, one of my favorites.
Oh, you're more of a whiskey guy.
Yeah, I love my whiskey. Yeah, you can always catch me in Sydney at whiskey bars. Yeah.
so for you, is it what time is it? Is it like noon or 1?
Just about midday. Yeah, so a really good time for a live stream. Actually, it's not like one of those ones at 3 a.m. that I do in the UK. So it's a really comfortable.
Yeah, have you done a live stream at 3 a.m.?
Yeah, I did one in Manchester. Okay. That was pretty fun, and I've done a couple in Copenhagen at 1 or 2 in the morning. So yeah, got to keep myself awake before I do those.
All right.
Anyway, cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for accepting. All right, so 2021 almost done. At least getting close to the vacation, so my work for the year will soon be complete.
Cool. Yeah, because you've sort of switched lately, haven't you? You sort of switched to a consulting avenue. So I'm sort of really interested to hear how you've found it, given that I've sort of done a similar move about a year back. Yeah. Tell us how you're going.
Yeah, it's going well. Well, I've started Revit Pure back in 2016, and it was a side project for me. And in March this year, with the pandemic, working from home anyway, and I figure, one of the main reasons I like to stay at work is for the social aspect of it, and the projects were interesting as well.
Mm.
But I could have made my move on my own for a while, but I just like
Mm.
the idea of working with a team. But now that was gone with the pandemic, so I
Yeah.
said, you know what, I should probably make my move. It's a good time.
For sure, yeah. I mean, something I was thinking the other day, just random shower thought, that I guess you'd probably relate to as well, is often people ask me if they're looking at consulting, like, how do I get started? And
Hmm.
I was trying to think, I don't think I could have even done it without having that sort of BIM persona through Aussie BIM Guru and likewise
Hmm.
for Revit Pure. I mean, do you think it would have even been possible without that sort of social platform to really make people know who you are and how to find you?
Uh, Not well. It might have been possible because there's such
Mm,
a big demand for it, but I would have
a lot harder.
knock doors and phone
Mm,
everybody to get some work. And I'm
yeah.
not naturally, I don't have like the big entrepreneur personality. Like
Mm.
I go to every meeting and shake everybody's hand. Like I'm not super shy as well, but like
Yeah.
I'm not the most outgoing person. So to have made to have been a little bit known in the community for sure would help, and I don't have to go running for contracts. I
Yeah,
had a
it's like
few
having
things
a
going on
resume
already.
before you even start the job in some ways for me.
Exactly,
I
yeah.
sometimes I don't even have to give a capability statement or anything like that. I just
Hmm.
say, you know me,
Yeah.
and off we go. So it's a great way to sort of shortcut that as a consultant, and also just not having to do cold calls. I've luckily haven't had to do any yet. They come to me, which is quite a unique experience for a consultant, I guess. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I would say it's a pretty good advice if someone watching might be wondering how to get started. I would say start with a few videos of interesting workflows you found. It's
Mm. Mm.
a great way to get started, and I've actually learned so much just from doing these videos. The process of teaching in the end, you learn a lot too.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess a lot of the topics become like the start of jobs I've noticed as well. Like sometimes you do a little workflow and something and they come and say, hey, like, like Railings, for example. I know you
Hmm.
had a really big focus on Railings this year with your
Hmm.
Autodesk University
Hmm.
presentation. And that a company literally struggles with Railings, finds your video, finds out you're consulting. And that's just like a business connection made naturally without you having to do anything. I guess it's a quite a natural way to sort of connect the problems to the solutions or the solvers. Yeah. Yeah. But welcome to the consulting world, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and tell me about your experience. So when have you got
Yeah.
into BIM consulting?
Yeah, I mean, I started just before the pandemic hit, so I was sort of like the original hipster of working from home before
Hmm.
everyone else started doing it. So I did it before it was cool, I guess. But I guess like the first 6 months, I was really just getting into the mood of being a consultant. Having
Hmm.
worked in management for so long, it's such a different experience. Like you're the accountant, you're the marketer. You do it all
Hmm.
yourself, unless you VA everything out overseas, which is expensive and has its own management overheads. So it was really interesting switching from being just a technical focused thinker to a business minded thinker. And I found it took about 6 months to really start landing those bigger clients that can sustain consulting just on its own. So there was like a bit of, I wouldn't say it's panic, but it's more like, like if I made the right choice, it's just going to work.
Hmm.
And then eventually you land those first big clients and suddenly you're like, hey, this is like way better than just working in one company all of a sudden. So it does take time, and I sort of had a similar focus to you in that you sort of produce your Revit Pure
Hmm.
pamphlets and content, and I saw you've got a template now, and I sort of do the same sort of thing, and I found that was a really great thing to complement the business with because so many people come to the business just wanting like very bespoke and complex services but they don't want to pay for content just as part of the service as well. I'm not going to build an entire template for every client that comes to me. So
Hmm.
it was great to sort of pair that with the service often. I found that also became a good lead into consulting as well. But I found over time that I'm getting more interested in computation and
Hmm.
programming as well. So that's sort of given me a bit of a refocus on what I'm doing, and a lot of services involve programming, Dynamo, Grasshopper, Rhino inside, a bit of Python. So it's given me a bit of a refocus, I guess, from just BIM because I got to meet more people, more types of companies, saw how BIM related to each of them, and realized that sort of programming is like the glue that can connect so many things with each other. I saw Scoredex too. I think he asked how I got into programming. I just pretty much just started playing with Dynamo. So I'll answer that one while I was there. And I also used Warcraft 3 when I was a kid, so that had a bit of programming in it. Got a video on my channel where I use Warcraft 3 and show people some old maps I made.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Um,
you were a map creator.
oh yeah, yeah.
Did you
I
create
remade
scenarios and all that?
Yeah, I made
Cool.
campaigns. I remade Diablo 2 Act 1 inside Warcraft 3.
Oh,
I'm not sure
wow.
why, but just for a bit of fun I did. So programmed all the abilities and everything. It's good fun.
Yeah,
But
I
that sort of
remember.
got me into it's like event-based programming. So it's like something happens, condition is met, do an action. That's pretty much like how all the
Hmm.
programming works in it. So it's more close to like how Guardian for Revit might work, and it picks up an event, it
Hmm.
checks something, and then it does something or prevents something. So it's a funny little connection to it all. But yeah, I guess going back to consulting, that sort of is where I find myself now. And one of my largest clients is actually a major firm in Australia that I potentially might work part time for. I've realised that you
Hmm.
do sometimes miss out on that team connection when you work on your own, and I could have employed people in my own company. But like you, I realised that the entrepreneurial spirit was a smaller portion of what I was really passionate about.
Hmm.
I do like solving problems and connecting point A to point B, and finding how all the programs play with each other. And as a business manager, you don't get all the time to do that, I guess, if you scale the business. So I've naturally found a group of consultants that I can work with, and just currently exploring contracts. So watch the skies, but I'll keep consulting on the side a couple of days a week, and continue to grow my course platform. So that's sort of where I find myself. But it was definitely the right move.
So it's
Because
it's a group of
yeah.
consultant. You're saying you
Oh
might.
yeah.
Huh.
So
Oh,
they're a large
interesting.
firm in Australia. I don't want to say too much because if the contract doesn't go through, it'll be an awkward sort of thing to
Hmm.
hype people up for. But they effectively have an in-house BIM consulting group that essentially umbrellas itself under the wider company structure, and I've sort of joined them as their sort of de facto computational leader on a sub-consulting basis. So fingers crossed that'll probably land sometime early in the new year, and you'll see it plastered all over my LinkedIn and all that stuff. So, but on the side, I still really like the ability to consult and support my
Hmm.
own clients as well. So, and I've sort of committed to a lot of them too, so I can't just go and drop that on them as well. I've got retainers and those sorts of management models that need me to hang around. I can't just go and drop everything. So yeah, but getting very spread across a lot of things at once, I guess, is always the challenge.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I found the most challenging when I got started with consulting. It was like creating a proposal. How do I do that exactly? Like the icon thing and stuff like that. I mean, it's not too complicated. You get done with it, but some of the business aspect. So
Yeah, the first
I've
couple
took
of
a few
times are harder,
courses
right?
to
Yeah.
get it right, but
The first couple of times are harder. I remember the first proposal I put together was so over the top. It was just for this
hmm.
little, like, I think it was like a $300 job. It was tiny. It was like very
Hmm.
small. And for people that don't know roughly consulting rates, that's not a lot for a consultant to really charge. So it's
Hmm.
almost like an hour job. And I think I wrote something like a 9-page proposal that took me about an hour, and pretty much spent more time just putting the proposal together, and ended up scaring the client away because it was too complicated. So I
Hmm.
learned often that being very direct and very to the point can help. Sometimes you don't even need a proposal. You just need to write a few dot points and let them know, and then you can formalize it in an agreement if it's a bigger job. But it does take a long time, and they don't really teach you at university, right? Like business acumen skills aren't necessarily a
Hmm.
part of the architectural curriculum in universities anymore, which is hard for consultants, but also hard for architects too. Like, how do you put a fee together, for example? Like,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
it's
Yeah,
difficult there.
I've been trying to learn on the net. There's a few good courses, a few good
Hmm.
podcasts as well. One is
Oh yeah.
called, what is it called, from a consultant to entrepreneur, something like that. And
Oh
there's
yeah, I know that
a
one.
few tips like that, like how do you to make a
Hmm.
proposal. And one of their tips was actually you agree with a rough idea of the price and the scope before
Yeah.
sending like 20 pages, so
Yeah.
you have a rough agreement, and then you can get more into the paperwork. But
Yeah, it's like
it
the
depends. Each
estimate.
situation can
Yeah.
be different.
Yeah, I tend to do the estimate until proposal sort of approach, because I guess legally,
Hmm.
as soon as you say the word proposal, you're in a bit of hot water if you change
Hmm.
anything. So I usually like to say, this is my estimate, this is my scope, and then right at the end you can stamp it with the P word officially. So yeah, it's fun one. I mean, I had a good lawyer as well that I started with that helped me sort of navigate
Really?
some of
Yeah.
those
Okay.
hurdles. Yeah, she worked for a large construction company, so I was quite fortunate to have her insight. But these days, I find I don't really tend to need too much counsel. It's just when I got started, I
Hmm.
realized I wasn't an expert in everything. I knew Revit, but I knew very little about the law when it comes to contracts. So it was a good way to patch those gaps, I guess. Yeah, but my accountant's at zero, so that worked out well. Yeah, no, it's cool. It's good to have you in the consulting world. I think it's a natural fit for people like us because we love solving so many dynamic problems, right? And that's the best way to connect with all those types of people?
Yeah, well, like for some reason, I ended up working with a lot of wood people in the wood industry.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Here, there's the Quebec Wood Export Bureau, which I've been working with a lot. Actually, I had Eli Gold on one of the episodes of the live show.
Oh, yes, I remember that one. Yeah, so it's more like you're looking at like objects or framing, or what sort of scale do you
Like,
tend to look at?
well, they're working with almost everyone in the wood industry here, so they're trying to create BIM content. And
Nice,
with a
nice.
new project recently, we've been looking at how to use data, and they're looking at speckle. So I've been watching a few speckle video. I know you made something about it.
Speckle's awesome. I love Speckle. I've been using it in the background here and there, just to connect programs together. Like Rhino Inside was my first like really big loved connection program. That's my favorite one. But Speckle is highly versatile, and the fact you can get it in Excel is also a really nice way to bridge the gap. So I've used that for a few interesting workflows for things like room data sheet connections and passing data from Revit to other programs, because we know how hard it can be to get data out of Revit in a clean way sometimes. So yeah, it's been a good tool for sure. Yeah, definitely needs more support. So definitely look it up, everyone. It's well
So
worth checking out.
I would ask you, what have you been the most excited about this year? Is there a kind of a specific app or a specific thing that got you really excited? I know it's probably more on the programming side, but there's
For sure.
something specific on that on that domain.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the thing that's excited me the most beyond like programs themselves is just the fact that there are more people talking about programming, and they're finding more context for it in our industry. It's no longer just like I'm learning Dynamo to make a twisted tower. It's actually like people are going back to their companies and automating workflows. I've introduced a lot of people to Dynamo and heard back from a lot of them as a result of like the success stories they've had. And I found this year's been a very formative year for the programming community in AEC, and there's other platforms like pyRevit, Speckle that you mentioned, Hyper, TestFit, all sorts of programs that are thinking outside the box more. And I'm noticing that's really, the one thing that really gets me the most excited at the moment. There are a few flops, like generative design, in my opinion, was always going to be a flop, the way it was marketed. So I'm sort of glad to see that one sort of fail. I guess I wouldn't say it absolutely failed, but I was sort of hoping it would, given that we had it for like 10 years and it didn't take off. And then, slap on an Autodesk logo and hope it works. So I was glad to see just programming as a paradigm take off. And I'm seeing more graduates coming out really curious about just for someone in the chat say they're about to roll a fatty. Naughty one. Sorry, I just had to stop that and laugh. But yeah, that's probably what excites me the most. pyRevit's like probably the thing that excites me the most as a program heading into the new year. That's a program I've actually properly sat down and looked at, whereas previously I was very aware of it, how it worked, and just couldn't find the time. But now that I know more about Python, it's a natural step from Dynamo to start really packaging these things into more versatile apps. Yeah. How about yourself? What excited you during the year we had?
Well, on the year recap, like I awarded my favorite app, which is not actually the app I use the most, but because I'm not in real estate, but the TestFit, I remember being blown away. Because I've seen a demo, prior to that, but it was not before this year that I've got to try it.
Yep. It's come a long way, right?
Yeah,
a very long way.
it did, and to me, and Clifton Harness, the CEO of TestFit, came on the show, and the way he explained his vision of generative design, it was pretty eye-opening for me.
It's more practical, right? He sort of gets
exactly,
how it fits. And he's such a cool CEO as well. Like everyone at that company is super cool. Like it definitely seems like one of those places where every employee appreciates the product and appreciates what the customer wants. It's not like a big corporate beast where it has multiple heads and some of them spit fire and some of them, are friendly. So I definitely appreciate the culture they've built. And I don't know if you ever saw their first trailers they did, but there's always just like this appreciation for where it started, because he used to have these, I don't know if in South Park when they have these parody trailers and there's a guy talking like, this summer coming to here. and literally that's like the voice in their first trailer they launched. And it's this guy going like, I forget what he says. He says something like, in a world where it takes like 40 years to put together an application. It's just so cheesy. So whenever like Clifton comments, someone says like in a world, and he always has a laugh. He's really humble and has a good laugh at it. But yeah, I agree. Great product, yeah, and developing fast.
Yeah, it's also the whole idea of what generative design is. Just the term generative design, it almost sounds like the machine does everything for you, and it's often
Yeah,
the example are like twisted towers and stuff like
yeah,
that. But the way it described it is product. Yeah, for those who don't know, like Google TestFit, you'll see a few GIFs what we're talking about. But the idea of a co-configurator, that's what he called it, and it's
yeah.
basically the human is still in control. You're just like sliding levers, entering some data.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're one of the
It's
only
still an
tools.
active
You
process.
go.
It just the
Yeah.
math is being done but by the computer, but all the data is still imputed, and the
Yeah.
options are chosen by the user. Because generative design is let's generate 1,000 options, and then okay, how do I know
Pick
which
one.
one I
Yeah.
should pick?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of intervention in the tool, isn't there? You can sort of jump in and say, actually put like a gym here and work around it. And it's very able to be customized. I think they added solar planes to it, so you can crank the building against like overshadowing planes. And it definitely seems to be picking the right things to focus on. Because there's a lot of alternatives like Delve and Digital Blue Foam, Space Maker, and I can't say I've seen the same level of responsiveness to what we need from those platforms. I think they're all good in their own way, but yeah, TestFit seems to be the one that's the most in tune with how our industry works, at least from a design perspective. I think, yeah.
Yeah, to jump back to pyRevit, have you started creating your own Revit tools using pyRevit?
Yeah. Yeah, only just. I sort of started by putting my Dynamo scripts onto toolbars and running them via pyRevit. And then I've started actually writing tools purely in Python. So, like the main one that I've been playing with is one that lets you isolate warnings by type in a view. And it's so much quicker than using Dynamo. And there's all these great little tools that Asan, the creators, built in that can pop up forms that you can feed lists of objects into and pick them and return the outcome. So you sort of get a bit more of a programmatic flow by writing in Python. It lets you sort of order how the tool functions. It's a little bit different to C Sharp, where you're sort of building modules that all work together to form an application. But so it's still like a linear process the way you write everything. But I found that just it's much more direct. I find Python like a super friendly, fun language to use as well. Dynamo can get a little bit spaghetti-ish sometimes, a little bit messy. So I do find Python's becoming my home language per se. And Asan's just such a dedicated developer too. You can tell he really loves and cares about the tool and the community. And you can feel it in the tool too. And you can also view like all his tools as well. They're all open. So you can sort of learn from what he's done as well. And I used it also to automate things based on events. So you can detect like if someone synchronizes, run a script, so you can actually respond to things happening, which Dynamo can't really do, but applications and pyRevit can do as well. So that's a bit of a sort of a secret hack that it unlocks as well. So yeah, it's really powerful, and I'll definitely have some videos coming to the channel next year to help other people sort of learn about the tool as well, and
Yeah.
hopefully apply some Python. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the first time I've heard, you cannot see it right now, but I'm sharing my screen with the stream, and it's one of the pamphlet I have about pyRevit. The first time I heard about
Oh, cool.
pyRevit was in
Yeah.
2019 at the Build conference in Seattle. There
Yep.
was
It's been
Dan
around a while now.
Dan Bogian from Oz Architecture. I don't know if he's
Oh,
still
yeah.
working there, but he
Okay.
had a great presentation, and a part of it was creating your own tool using pyRevit and with the Python language. It was basic, but I've got some of the basic features.
I
If
mean,
you want to get
that's the thing I
started with,
find.
but
I find it sad about the tool because so many people don't go beyond the add-ins bar and realize you can actually build your own tools on the back
yes,
of this
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Like I've seen some firms go crazy with pyRevit and build amazing toolbars. One of my favorites, I forget her name, her company, they built in a tool that uses an API to find the nearest taco store. So that's open at the time because people used to do like competitions and had to go and buy a
Yeah.
taco, and you just ping it and it tells you where the nearest one is. So it's amazing what you can do with it, and Python's a beautiful language. Hey, the Revit kid just got it.
Nice. I'm seeing Benjamin, which is somebody I'm
Oh yeah, I
working
know
with
Benjamin.
occasionally. He's a local here from Quebec City, and is asking if you have any limitation using pyRevit for your own script.
Yeah, I mean, the limitation is really your knowledge of Python. That's the only block really that's in the way. There are like a few things you can't do as easily with Python that take more work to write. So if you were trying to build like a proper application with buttons that all respond to each other, I don't know how easy that would be to do in pyRevit or Python. Like C Sharp and Visual Studio do work in a very different way to Python wrappers. But I think for the most part, the hardest thing is just abandoning custom packages. That's probably the biggest step in getting out of Dynamo into pyRevit. And that requires like knowledge of the Revit API and Python and how Revit API is written in Python as well. Because a lot of people get really stuck when they go to the Revit API docs website and there's no like examples of Python, or there's very few. So you almost have to like guess the Python syntax sometimes. So I think that's probably like the biggest limitation or challenge in getting into pyRevit. But it is definitely a target that's worth setting in the longer term, I think.
Yeah, there's somebody I've been talking to in Montreal who says he only uses Dynamo as an interface, but he uses only Python nodes inside of it.
Oh, okay, cool.
And only the out-of-the-box nodes and Python scripts. So to make sure that the scripts always worked. So I thought that was an interesting approach. But yeah, like of course we all have that issue where you update, get to new Revit and the script doesn't work.
Yeah. There's always going to be challenges between versions, and Autodesk occasionally will replace methods with other ones that no longer work. Like in 2022, they replaced the utility that converts project units into some other name, and suddenly all these nodes stopped working. I think like custom packages, they do have their place, but you need like a good deployment strategy for how you get them out to your users. And ideally it has to be like relatively automatic. Like one of my clients right now, I'm literally just trying to coordinate with their IT department how to like get like something like a batch script to just run every time a Revit user signs in, that goes and rewrites the file without scaring the users because they see a big batch script window pop up and probably try to close it sometimes. So there's definitely considerations there. There's platforms like Orchestra by Data Shapes that sort of help as well. I mean, it's a paid solution. Some people don't like paid solutions, but I think they're worth the money when you use them right. So there's other ways, but I do find minimizing the number of packages is definitely important in a company. Some packages are just so hard to replace, like Data Shapes with user interfaces. That's pretty much always in my library, no matter which computer I'm working on, just because sometimes that interface is far superior to like Dynamo Player.
Some
of them are essential.
Usually some of the most used ones are usually updated though. Like I use Rhythm might be the one I use the
Rhythm's
most.
Great.
With especially the filtering nodes.
Because they're handy, and also get parameter by type or instance. They're very handy.
Actually, John Pearson is going to be on the show in January. I don't remember which date actually, but pretty excited about that.
Yeah. I mean, he's like my Dynamo hero.
Yeah.
I'll definitely watch that one. Cool.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so somebody asked you earlier on if you've played with C Sharp.
Yes, I have. I've got to be honest, the language scared the heck out of me. It's very intimidating to get started with. It's very different to Python in some ways, in that you have to declare your variables based on their data types, whereas Python is much more forgiving on the type of data that you feed into it. Like it's more that the methods sort of understand what they're meant to do based on the data you give them, whereas in C Sharp, you're constantly declaring static, or I forget the other name. There's a few types of variables, and there's a lot of rules to follow because you're dealing much more closely with the way a computer functions. So there's a lot of rules in how you have to pass and handle objects, but also just Visual Studio itself is like its own beast to understand, because instead you're sort of packaging all these tools into like a functional application, rather than just writing a single script. You're sort of building modules that go together. So I found I sort of struggled to find a very beginner suitable resource. That was also a challenge for me. I found a lot of intermediate resources that take a few quantum leaps to get from beginner to intermediate, but they just go, well, here's the one I prepared earlier, and I'm like, but I want to know about that. I don't want to know about like what you're going to do with it. So, and there's probably some amazing resources out there. So if anyone knows them, like feel free to recommend them. But I also just found applications as well. It's not necessarily something that I find excites me as much, because it sort of puts you in the corner a little bit too. Like you become like the app developer that no one understands. Like if you show someone a C# script in Visual Studio, they're lost immediately. They don't want to know, because there's like 5 different windows and it's all written like, whereas Visual Code is a better way to sort of engage people in the process of programming. So I think like I have to sit somewhere in the middle just to help people actually get to other places. Like some people I recognize from my channel very early on that sort of started with Dynamo and have went past me now. They're doing C#. Like I know a guy called Tade Hakopian, I think he is. He's all around the scene at AU now using Forge, and I remember him showing up on my channel like right at the start and asking questions about Dynamo. So I sort of like to be that bridge that helps people get to where they need to be, I guess.
Yeah, I had an episode with Michael from Arch Smarter. Pretty good episode about creating your first add-in using C#.
Yeah, I saw that one.
It was,
that was pretty good.
Pretty detailed. Yeah, Michael's stuff is always on point.
I mean, there's a lot of rules in C#. That's the hard thing. So whilst you can get the console to say hello to you or something like that, it's like, okay, now we're going to add the Revit API, and it's just like, whoa, like now it changes. So it's sort of like you learn one thing and then there's 40 more things to learn on the back of that. So it's a journey for sure. Like, and I think it's one that most people definitely, are happy they took once they get to, an advanced level. But at the same time, I appreciate that a lot of people just want to be architects and maybe use like the tiniest bit of programming just to speed up their day, but they don't want to be the app developer just thrown into the corner. And if you are going to be an app developer, like request a bigger salary because you can request one. So never be like an architect as a programmer.
And the problem for a firm, I guess, they don't want to be dependent on a single person in case the person leave. Well, what happens to all the code? So I think it has got to be somewhat accessible. It depends on the context, of course. Each situation is a bit different.
Depends on the size of the company, the budgets they're playing with. I mean, a couple of my clients, I did strategy for them and identified they had literal linchpins in their company, or if you pulled them out, they had no idea what to do tomorrow. Like even people that didn't know how to run the tools, let alone build them. So often, my advice was to have those people document what they were doing. Not just how to run their tool, but the technical side as well. So writing like documentation into their code so that a basic programmer could look at it and probably understand what it was doing and find the problems. But often, building time into the company's budget for that's also another challenge. So it's almost like the companies need to be willing to take the full journey if they want to take one. Yeah. Otherwise, you get halfway and it doesn't work and waste of time. Let's go back to the drawing board. So it's definitely a difficult journey to take, but I think it's an essential journey heading into the future. I think if firms don't have in-house development, they're going to be very limited by the tools that they use. Revit's not changing that much anymore. It's getting a lot of tack-ons thrown at it, and add-ins are really like where most of the development happens these days. So I think if you're limiting yourself to what's on the market, you're limiting the company's ability as well.
Yeah, it's. I'm really wondering what's going to happen with Revit in the future. I used to think perhaps a new software is going to replace it, but what it seems to be happening right now is there's so many plugins and so many tools. Like, is there any software in AEC that has as many plugins as Revit? I don't think so.
Definitely not. I mean, the developer community is amazing. Like, I can't think of any other program that has such a community like it. As much as we hate to love Revit, we can't deny that Autodesk did something right with opening up its API the way they did, and inviting people into the development community, even though a lot of people say we're doing their work for them. At the same time, you look at other platforms that don't have that sort of community, and you're very much just waiting for the new features each year. What's new? What's new? And in Revit, we're like, I don't really care what's new because we know there's going to be like 2 features and no new logo. So
sketchy lines.
Oh, gosh, and cranked walls, curved walls, whatever the heck they're doing with walls these days.
But the plugins community and the Dynamo and automating community around Revit is so amazing. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with Revit, but I don't think it's going away soon. I've kind of changed my mind about that. I used to think that the development is so slow that something is going to take its place. But I think with all the solutions around Revit, so many problems can be solved. And I think I saw something from, it might have been a promotional video from Autodesk, but it was Dan Stein from BIM Chapters. He said the reason he likes Revit is that it brings people together. And I've realized, well, actually, it's quite true. There's, just how many software would have so many people joining in and interacting. It's an amazing community, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of few platforms that brings disciplines together. There's not too many that are multidisciplinary in nature. Like, sure, you have ArchiCAD and you can use the Morph tool to make funky things that look a little bit like services. Sorry, I don't mean to bash ArchiCAD too hard. I'll probably get hung up to dry for that one. But like I think like it's one of few platforms that does invite more than just architects into play or just engineers into play, and we sort of speak the same languages, the same problems, the same frustrations as each other at least, which does build that camaraderie to some degree. I think like the future of Revit is it's probably going to be less like the one-stop shop platform. Like even now I use heaps of Rhino and Rhino Inside to do things that Revit just isn't good at doing. And I think there's other platforms on the horizon that I'm aware of that are also going to replace a lot of features. It just depends on how much companies can afford to fragment their workflows from a cost perspective, but also a process perspective as well. So I think that's like one of the changes I expect to see. Like, maybe, I don't think Blender's going to come and take it over anytime, maybe ever, but like, you might see programs like that fill some of the niches that Revit's just not that good at the end of the day. But I think it's always going to be like the documentation platform for projects. I haven't seen anything even try to cover the features that Revit offers there.
That's the issue, as much as some of the features seems to be pretty outdated, like building something to that scope. And I didn't never use that much of the MEP features, but recently I took I dug into it a little bit and started playing with them. It's like, man, there's quite a lot. So if you take all the features from architecture, structure, MEP, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, a lot going on in the background that we don't use. And likewise, they probably don't know a lot of the architecture tools, but sometimes I use them too, and I go, wow, these are hard to use. Like I can see why the engineers are so frustrated, because we're all working on work plans, but the engineers are trying to rake pipes and ducts and get them to all join up. And I can totally sympathize to why, they all want like another platform. But I saw someone saying that the expectation for Revit 2023 and the icon will change. And yeah, I did hear the icon's going to change. I wonder if it's going to have a 23 on it though, or it's just going to be like a different R again. Like, I hope they start putting numbers on those things.
Yeah, that's funny. I've talked with one of the guys from Autodesk, the Revit chief marketer, and I asked him, is Revit going to have a new logo? And he told me, oh, that's confidential. But I'm guessing, yes, there's going to be
I made about 1,000 of them in generative design on one of my videos once for fun anyway, just to poke fun at the fact that they seem to struggle so much with making new logos. But yeah, hopefully something useful.
Yeah, and the same blob on the splash screen for like 7 years now or so.
I know, it's like the same weird like abstract thing that no one ever actually probably built in Revit in the first place. It was built in Maya or something like that. It might have been built in Revit, but definitely not rendered in it, that's for sure.
Benjamin asks, do you have any expectation for Revit 2023? I think I do have the access to the preview, but I didn't have time to check it out.
There's a Trello board. There's like a list of roadmap features on Trello that they maintain, so you can always look that up, and it sort of mentions the things they're looking at. I mean, I really expect Revit has to become better at interoperating with IFC. It just has to be a thing. I mean, they're IFC 4 certified now. They have no excuse. So I feel like now they need to work features back into the platform that support IFC rather than just focusing on how the IFC is generated out of Revit, because you have to do so much work to generate like a valid IFC in Revit as it is. Like you have to use all these custom parameters that are very limited in how many you use and how you can connect them using mapping files. And for a basic user, like they just want to hit export IFC. They don't want to, go into a notepad file and work with tab separations. And it's like keynotes, like no one ever knows how to do that except for the BIM manager. So like it's the same problem. So I do expect that they're hopefully going to release either like an integrated feature, like sort of like the BIM interoperability tools for Kobe. I hope they're going to build like some more direct ways to map like property sets into IFCs much more directly. Easier ways to get your building stories to be recognized in an IFC file. Some of the problems that are already there, such as just categories not working, like not going to a relevant IFC category. Hopefully we'll see some of that. But I mean, that's sort of the feature I've been bashing Autodesk for about 2 years now, because it's just so hard to work with IFCs, both coming in and also going out with other ones. Like anyone that works in ArchiCAD on a joint venture with a Revit team just is so frustrated with the Revit users typically, because they just get garbage every week from the Revit model, and they're probably sending over like a lovely IFC, but then Revit can't even read half of it anyway, so what's the point? So I think that's hopefully my main feature I'd like to see.
Yeah, I think from my part, I hope at some point they revisit the user interface a little bit. Even though it's like some of the to-do list that most people would expect. Like, I did a talk about Railings and the menus to get to the properties you want in Railings.
All over the place.
Like, I've got to find the chart I made last summer for my session about Railings.
Yeah. I remember that Twitter post that got passed around all over the place. I remember that. It was probably one of your biggest Twitter posts, right?
Yes, probably the most share of the year. Let me share that.
I think all the Blender enthusiasts got on that post as well and just said, "This is why we don't like Revit, because this is just to do a railing. There's like 48 steps."
Yeah, as I was making this, I realized that's kind of crazy. But at the same time, I was really making this to help, like, visualize every single. Yeah, you cannot see it on your screen, but there's like 63 different parameters. And separated in like 7 different menus. So I thought there's probably a better way to do this.
Yeah, and all that, and we still can't place balusters on a full-on railing, just only on handrails. It's like, after all that. And also just getting a railing to go around the corner on a stair. Oh my gosh, just impossible. But yeah, it's good fun. I've done so many in-place railings in the past just to get them to actually be buildable railing systems.
Yeah, I saw a post somewhere. It might be from Revit anonymous complaints, and somebody was mentioning, well, Autodesk University, most of the sessions were about like generative design, but the most popular were about stuff like railings. That people
that we need, right?
After 10 years, they still struggle with.
Yeah, I hate to say it, like, that's actually what we need. We don't need like a talk about how to randomize a facade panel in generative design that's never going to actually entice a client in the first place. And to be honest, we'd do that study in probably something like Rhino anyway, because Grasshopper is like 1,000% more capable generatively. Like, I hate to bash the product so much, but it's really, I wish they didn't focus that much attention on it, because we already have so many solvers in Grasshopper and we have Rhino inside. I'd rather they just got more focused on the Rhino inside project and, supported that more directly instead. But I guess that doesn't really support the closed ecosystem mentality. But yeah, I think the railings, that they're just a thing that everyone struggles with, whereas no one really struggles with the generative design tool because we don't use it.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't had time to play with it at all. So I'm wondering, from your part, what has been the most popular or appreciated video on your channel?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of listed them off because I sort of measure them based on different metrics. I mean, if I go on just pure views, the most popular videos I ever make are just the what's new in Revit videos, because they actually are probably my only videos that manage to hit the algorithm at the right time. So usually I get like 15 to 20,000 views on those over time. And I did one on Revit, one on Dynamo, and I was disappointed that the Dynamo one wasn't that popular because most of the new features that excited me were actually in Dynamo.
Yeah, the ceiling API, right?
Yeah, like the floor and ceiling APIs were a huge addition to automation. Like, I'm on so many 2020 projects that I'm just like, can we please put them in 2022 so that we don't have to like model ceilings manually? It's just like such a pain. But that was probably my most popular one. I had like one that got a lot of discussion on it, which was where I spoke about why I still have AutoCAD on my machine as a Revit user, which is probably about to become why I don't pay for AutoCAD and I just pay for Revit and I use Rhino to process CAD files instead. It's probably more likely what that will become. But at the time,
what's the reason? That's like you...
things like, just having to process CAD files before they even get into Revit in the first place.
Yeah, to clean them up.
Ones. Yeah, exploding, flattening, getting out all the XREFs and getting rid of all those shapefile warnings. And there's a lot of things that you still need to get right in AutoCAD, or also just moving it closer to the origin so that it doesn't spit out the comfort window warning where, it truncates if it's more than like 14 kilometers away or about 11 miles, I think it is. So they're the main reasons I use it. And also just a lot of people use it because they still use it, I guess. So a lot of the time clients just send me a DWG, and rather than having to import it into Revit to look at it, I can just still view it in there. But I guess there's programs like FreeCAD on the horizon that are really developing quite quickly that might maybe trump AutoCAD to some degree. Probably not as a professional tool, but maybe as a viewing or a modification tool.
And do you have a personal favorite video that you did? Or because sometimes I know, like, my favorite video that I'm the most proud of is often not the one that get the most views.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. Like, always the way with me. Like, I mean, probably my favorite videos are usually the least popular ones. Like, my 2 favorite videos I've ever done, probably my favorite one is on a tool in Grasshopper called Anemone, which lets you loop things and do things over and over and over again, which lets you
How
do
is that
really
called? An
interesting.
enemy? Like an enemy?
Yeah, an enemy, yeah.
Okay.
So all the Grasshopper plugins are named after animals. Typically, they have this running theme that Grasshopper is like the zoo, because
Uh,
Rhino is an animal as well. So
do you want to share a quick preview on your screen so people
oh
can
yeah,
have
sure, I can look it
a
up. I'll
visual
just make a
glance?
new window.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty funky. I'll just get it up on screen. But effectively, it allows you to like tell the program to keep doing things and then send the data back and do it again. So you can effectively make like transformative scripts that can find like emergent forms. I'll just wait for the ad to finish. That's one change I made to my channel this year. I had to monetize it because YouTube was starting to put ads on it anyway. So rather than let YouTube pocket all the money, I decided I'd take it. So I mean, like probably my absolute favorite thing I did using it is I built a little video game to test it out. So assuming this is on screen. This is currently on the screen.
Yeah. We can see it. Yeah, we can see it.
So I built a game where you effectively had to protect like the middle of a sphere, like asteroid style, and then an enemy is just telling all those circles to keep moving towards here. And if they hit there, then an enemy also picks it up and absorbs the circle, creates more. But I've used it since then to do like optimization of facades. So you can tell like a form to start relaxing effectively, and you can use things like Voronoi tools that cellulate a surface and tell them to keep sampling the center of each cell as the new Voronoi division. It's really wacky, but effectively it gets you very close to a situation where your facade panels can be very similar in size, and you can start setting up more manufacturable facades and solutions, and your contractors are infinitely more happy. I used it on a job for a client where we went down from about 300 facade panel types to I think it was 9 in the end in terms of the rough size with a little bit of tolerance. So that was probably one of my favorites I ever did, but definitely the generative design logo tool is my favorite from the year. I just had so much fun doing it because I sort of poked a bit of fun at Autodesk in it as well. Just paying out the tool doesn't work. I mean, I'm troll facing in the in the thumbnail. So, but eventually, what I'm doing with it is I'm building a Revit logo in Dynamo. Obviously a far more attractive logo than the current one, and then eventually I start just spitting them out. And I had a control in it that changes the color of the logo to make it more interesting, which is called the open letter satisfier. So I definitely had a little bit of fun drawing upon the context of what Autodesk was dealing with at the time. So it was pretty fun. And eventually I actually go and spit them out into a folder, so you can actually use them as real Revit icons if you want to as well. So that was probably my favorite video. Yeah. That's probably my favorite video, and that's why I hadn't shaved a bit. So yeah, that's probably mine. How about yours? What were your favorites?
Well, let me bring up the post I did.
Yep.
So yeah, like now people can see the post. So you can go to the Revit Pure blog, revitpure.com, and just go to the blog, and their most recent post is top 5 most popular posts of the year. And I would say that this year, the post that I've released this year that's been the most popular, it's called 15 Advanced Tricks to Master Schedules in Revit. And it was based by a live session I did, one of the first with Purvi Irwin, which was one of my favorite session. It was a session I came out and I've learned a lot, and I could put it to use immediately, which was amazing because, yeah, the power of schedules, I think it can be underestimated in Revit, and sometimes people go straight to Dynamo, and well, with kind of a temporary schedule you could do a lot of it, like change the parameters, or schedules are such a powerful tool, I think.
Yeah, I remember banging on about them when I first started using Revit, and like no one was using them, and I was like, these can save you so much. It was like Dynamo before Dynamo. I remember you used to be able to do like a wall schedule and like sort them by their base levels and offsets, and you could start multi-selecting walls based on their common like offsets and start modifying them in bulk. And it was sort of like using Dynamo for me to begin with, and I still use them quite a lot. But you're right, some people just go straight to Dynamo now, when like a schedule could totally just do it. A lot of people don't know about the itemize button that lets you group things into sets of data, so you can modify things in bulk. That's probably like the biggest simple shortcut for schedules that sells people over. But there were heaps of great tricks in there from Purvi. I remember watching that one, and there was even a couple of things I didn't use as often or didn't think of as often.
Yeah, well, and also with the filtering tool and schedules, which is it's pretty similar to what we do in Dynamo. You know, we
Yep.
filter a bunch of elements, and then when something happens to these elements, but you can kind of do the same thing in
Yeah, yeah. I'd go as
in
far to say it's
schedules.
probably
Hmm.
using the same tools as well in the background in the API.
Yeah,
I'd go
yeah.
as far to say. Mm.
And a few useful things. I didn't know you could insert a
Oh,
row
frozen.
just below the header of the schedule, and you
Yeah,
can
that
enter
tip's actually
information. Hmm.
a big bane of my existence on a project. Someone used a tool from D-Roots, which is a good tool for what it's doing, but like was not the place to use it. Where they essentially took all these RIM data sheets and from Excel into Revit using this, and they built all the RDSs
Uh-huh.
in Revit. And we found like a lot of different ways to do it that were more data centric and didn't, because once the data's in there, you've got to relink it, repush it each time it changes. So yeah, sometimes the header trick can be a bit dangerous if it's abused too hard, but it's handy when you just want to build a static schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I just love playing with schedules so much. Whenever as
Yeah.
a client asks, "Can you make this kind of complicated schedules?" Yeah, yes, I can. It's I always have a blast doing it. Especially here in Canada, you know, we have both metric and imperial. We use both units depending on what kind of project it is, and sometimes we need to show both on the schedules. And most people are not aware that you can like duplicate a value and but show
Yep.
both units with
Yeah.
using the calculated
Sure.
value.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Even like appending parameters together to concatenate their fields. Like if you want to build a door mark out of a few parameters, for example, rather than pushing it together using Dynamo, you can just concatenate it using something else. Like there's a lot of things you can do with it. I think too, you're looking at the database too. That's what I like about schedules. You're appreciating that
Exactly,
Revit's
yeah.
really just containers containing data. Like a chair is not a chair; it's just a piece of geometry that's got metadata attached to it. So it sort of
Exactly,
raises
yeah.
the appreciation for data, I guess. Yeah, even clients, they get excited sometimes when you show them a schedule because they go, "Oh, there's actually like things behind the scenes here. It's not just drawings that we're working with." So it's a good way to sell the client. Yeah, I think you've got like maybe like a area discrepancy check on there with conditional formatting. I've used that for clients before to
Yeah,
show them.
conditional formatting
Yeah.
is amazing. This one is a yes no dot schedule
Okay. Yeah.
that
I
shows.
like the. Oh, this is where you have an extra column for each
Yeah,
driving.
yeah. There's a few
Yeah. Yeah.
tricks. Yeah, because this is not something I would prefer as a schedule, but some
Hmm.
clients would they really like it. There's a couple of ways you can build a schedule like
I,
this,
I built an
and
absolute beast for a client that does that using Dynamo automatically. So you just run it and it generates the parameters and the schedule. But it's an absolute beast to get right.
yeah, and actually, my next pamphlet is going to be about door schedules specifically,
Oh
and
yeah.
about creating a like hardware set using key
Mm.
schedules.
Yep. Oh, awesome. I love key schedules. Yeah, like they're really useful now that in 2022 you can use shared parameters in them. That was pretty much what we needed to open key schedules up. So I found I use them a lot more now in 2022, especially for feasibility when you're assigning like programs to mass floors, and there's all sorts of really great tools for it. I saw a couple of people in the comments just thanking us in general for helping them, and I just wanted to say quickly, rather than respond to you all individually, that I'm glad to say that we're able to help all of you with these sorts of things. So yeah, very cool. I saw too someone asked about the pandemic as well, and did we notice that it changed the way that we design? I got to say, I didn't notice it as much as I expected to. Like we have a lot more focus on the pedestrian experience, social separation, maximum areas spaces can support, but you really sort of have to force it into discussion sometimes. Often the clients still aren't thinking about it as much as I thought they would, especially in like commercial space. They're often almost not even asking us to run studies on chair separation, and I often have to say, hey, like let's actually run a study on how many people you can fit in your office if we have like 4 meter separation requirements, and you sort of force it out. But yeah, how about yourself on your side of the world? Did it really change how you think?
You know, I haven't worked on a lot of actual design projects recently, but at the beginning of the year, I was working on the government project for new offices for a ministry of, I don't remember which one it was, but basically it was the idea of a hybrid working, that people would work 3 days a week at home and then two days a week at the office, and that they would share the space, so there was no more fixed space in the office for each person. So it, like, let's be honest, it's a way for them to save cost. But
Yeah, I've seen a lot of interesting workspace solutions actually emerge on the back of it. I know one firm in Australia called BVN, they made a really interesting desk arrangement tool that they call Octopus, which is effectively a giant umbilical circle in the ceiling that has all the cables you can pull out of it to connect your work desk. And they put all their desks on wheels, and you can effectively just move yourself around the office to fit in different team configurations. And it means you can still have like a hard drive box on your computer. You're not forced to just use laptops. So that was one interesting example, but it was funny that the firm sort of sorted themselves out. And I wonder if like any clients used a similar solution, or it was very much just a, well, we're going to do it even if no one else wants to sort of thing. But that looked very interesting. And I guess I'm working on laptops typically now as well, not as often on hard drive boxes, as much as I miss them because they do have better speed typically.
Yeah.
But I've got a beastie mobile workstation over here that's essentially like a laptop but a computer at the same time. Pretty heavy, but yeah, in terms of design, I guess they were the main things I noticed. Yeah, but hopefully we'll see more consideration in future, and or just less variance as well. Hopefully, maybe it won't be a consideration. Fingers crossed.
All right, so I see time flying. Something I would like to
Yeah,
ask the chat is share your favorite highlight. Is there kind of a script, a new feature, a plugin, another app, or something you've discovered this year that really helped you? I would be curious to know. So type it in the chat. So I think there was a few points we wanted to talk about. I don't even
we had a few
remember.
things, didn't we?
What was
Might have to do another one in the new year to pick up a couple of them in more detail.
Yeah, exactly.
But there was a few, yeah.
Let me have a quick look.
I think one of them was something that you covered a little bit. I noticed you sort of got your teeth sunk into manufacturer content.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you find that discussion went? Did you find your opinion changed, or you managed to convince other manufacturers to rethink how?
Well, I've talked with the folks at BIM Objects. So to put it in context, generally speaking, advise that people should not download content from BIM Objects because I found most of the time it's not high quality. And in discussing with the people over there, and there's super smart people that want to do great work. They want to do the right thing. They were looking at ways to improve some of their content, or perhaps have more of premium content. So they were actively engaged into it. But what I've learned also is that a lot of these families in BIM objects are made from scripts, or they may be made in another software, in Rhino or something else. And then using scripts, they're put in Revit with a bunch of parameters added automatically. So
48 classification systems inside every family that I have to delete with Dynamo every time. I have a script literally that's just like the BIM object cleaner. It just finds all the parameters not being used by the family and gets rid of them. I think they took on like a massive task. Like they're trying to cover the world, and they're trying to do it officially, not like Revit City where they just like will let everyone just put hot garbage on the platform and who cares. Whereas BIM object is trying to say we're trying to give everyone the right thing. It's a tricky one. I think they took on like a monumental task, and maybe it's just a matter of refining it back a step to listen to what people need and what they don't need. And
well, the tricky thing is if users are not paying for the content, that means the manufacturers are, and manufacturers are not aware of what the user needs in BIM software. And what manufacturers want is super detailed families, and they want like their 16 phone numbers inside of the family.
I assume you've had a consulting job for manufacturer content already, or I've had a couple, and they're definitely weird requirements. But
for manufacturing, not really, honestly. But
it definitely makes more sense when you do, because they put this crazy list of requirements out, and I ended up sending a reverse brief back saying, hey, like this isn't going to be like what people need, and they were very surprised. They were like, well, the last people just said yes, and I was like, well. That's probably why no one's using your BIM objects.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a funny one.
Yeah, but I've talked to the folks at BIM Smith, which I think have a much smaller collection of families. But what Ben, the CEO of BIM Smith, told me is that they do everything in the house. So all the families, and they have a checklist, and they have an audit of the families. So I think that's what we need from manufacturers' families, because I think. It's kind of sad that we have to recommend to people to not use manufacturer's family when you think about it, because the idea of BIM is that somebody create content and you can use it in your model. That should be the idea of it. So it's sad that I cannot tell user, go ahead and download families from.
It's sort of a combination of a few different problems, isn't it? Like, I mean, the content, sure, it's too detailed, but Revit's not built to handle these super detailed objects either. And at the same time, most firms have very custom systems that don't talk to the way other firms work. So it's a mixture of problems, not necessarily all the manufacturer or the object creator's fault, but maybe it's just too hard to please all the industry with one family. I guess that's also the challenge that we face. But I mean, even I myself, I built my own template and content, and I just had to pick a very specific system to develop for architects. And I said, this is literally for design through to documentation architects, and I'm not trying to build families for manufacturers with this. I'm not trying to build concept families, just everything in the middle that does what we need. Yeah, it's also I mentioned Property Wizard as well. That's a fantastic tool.
Yeah, people mentioning the tools they prefer. Somebody mentioned Power BI, which I should get into. Didn't have so many things.
BI.
I have like a checklist, like 20 items. I want to try.
Power BI is definitely worth checking out. I actually use it with one of my clients at the moment to track their Dynamo script usage. I had a video on my channel during the year that showed how to build in a little log file or journal file creator that says like who ran a script, when they ran it, what the script was, what the project was, and did it work. And then like I build up little journal files and read them in Power BI and get like a full readout of like who's using Dynamo with this particular client across the month. I just come back, refresh the data, and I can see exactly what's happening. I can see where someone ran a script 4 times in a row, which means it probably didn't work. So I can go and chase them up and say, hey, like looks like this didn't work for you. So it's like super powerful for getting quick insights, I've found. Yeah.
So having a glance at the chat as well. Somebody, Benjamin, mentioned Python, and ScourDX mentioned using Sketchfab for custom Enscape asset. I don't know about it. And Sipe Arch, that is, he says is huge in South America. Don't know about it as well. Interesting.
I haven't tried Sipe Arch, but I know what he means with Sketchfab. I believe it might be generating OBJs or like a file that's directly compatible with Enscape. The asset editor is pretty cool in Enscape. Like I built a few custom assets like the Batmobile and Batman and had a bit of fun with it. So it's pretty quick and easy. I usually use Blender and Rhino is my pipeline to get an asset into Blender, but I think you're right. Sketchfab probably is quite direct as well. So yeah, good one. Civil 3D, Dynamo for Civil 3D, I think popped up a couple of times, which is cool. So we've now got more than just a Revit community using Dynamo. That it's a little bit harder for them because there's less packages and less support, and the API is a little bit different to Revit's. But it's good to see more platforms picking up on the Dynamo platform.
I would say recently something I've been using quite a lot is Wood plugins to generate the wood structure.
You're like MWF or
AutoCAD? There's M on the both of them. I've tried both of them. The one with AutoCAD, the nice thing is you can buy separate components separately. Like you can buy the wall module, which is what my client needs. Doesn't really need the roof component, but it's pretty amazing. Although it costs almost more than Revit itself per year. It's pretty expensive, but it's quite amazing what it can do, and it can generate shop drawings as well. Because I've been working with a client in the prefab space.
It's interesting though, because I guess they're targeting like fabricators and constructors, and I've noticed, having consulted to a lot of builders and fabricators, I gotta say, like, architects really need to work on their fees, like, because there's a lot of money on that side of the fence, and they can actually, a lot of companies don't even blink at something like AutoCAD once they can turn out like, a few $1 million a year using like a $5,000 plugin. It's just
I mean, it's a no-brainer with when you're a prefab shop. It's so quick. It's so no doubt about it.
We really need like architects and even engineers to start putting together sensible fees. I don't know if it's that way on your side of the world, but in Australia we see some very low fees going around. And
it's quite terrible here. It's better than the BIM world. So that's why
it looks so expensive, probably as well. I keep saying we're in the race to the bottom. It's sort of like what I like to call it, but hopefully we'll start climbing back up to the top.
All right. Since I've mentioned it, I wanted to briefly make a small demo. So on my screen, I'm showing that this is AutoCAD. I want to try MWF as well. But right now, this one has been working pretty good for me. And the idea is just, let me put a couple of windows. Is if I select wall and I click on frame wall, I need to load the family. It's not working for some reason. What's going on? There's no material assigned. Oh yeah, I need to put a not generic wall. Yeah, this one should work. Yeah, I think I actually showed that plugin as well with
it's live demos. Live
Jeff,
demos are always tough.
I know, live demos. But
it
anyway,
does work. Yeah.
You cannot see it on my screen, perhaps with a little delay on the stream. But the idea is that it creates a wall and create the wall structure around the openings. Because I've tried to create some Dynamo scripts to do the same thing. And it works, when you have a simple wall, but then creating the openings, it was too much work. And I've realized it was better for the client to get a license of the software.
Yeah, it looks like it's done pretty much every opening perfectly. You got your king studs. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and it's not using curtain walls, is it? It's all structural frame.
No, yeah, I saw a few videos example, and I thought, I didn't want to use curtain wall. I don't like that solution.
They're very limited. Yeah, they don't do everything. I've tried using them before, and you run into issues with mullion and transom positions very quickly with those ones. Yeah.
All right, so I think we should close it soon. There was something else I wanted to mention.
We'd probably just talk about what's happening next year, I guess. Is probably where to finish, right?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Looking at... Yeah. All right, yeah. What do you have? Well, do you want to talk about your course? Oh, yeah, we can start with what's going on next year.
Yeah, for sure.
What are your plans?
I guess like the industry's, still powering on after COVID, and I've had a very good year with consulting again, so I'm definitely continuing as a BIM consultant. Potentially on a part-time basis, we'll be joining that BIM collective that I spoke about earlier. If the contract lands, it's pretty much all written up. I'm just dotting the I's, crossing the T's at the moment, but hopefully going to be joining a collective part-time. And then on the side, I'm maintaining my content and course content platform. So I do have a platform at courses.bimguru.education where I've just released a new Dynamo course, which is going really well.
All right. Do you want to show it on the screen?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. So this is my platform at the moment. I'm still working on the graphics a little bit, but I do have subtitles in 8 languages at the moment on my course, which is this one here. And it's really aimed at beginners up to intermediate, but it does go all the way up to Python and API, where I focus on all sorts of practical uses for Dynamo. 15 chapters, $50 for 1 month or 200 perpetual. I'd recommend probably just trying out the month first because you might get through it in a month. You get a certificate, all that jazz, but at the same time, my goal is really just to accelerate your ability to learn Dynamo. So yeah, that's me. But in this case, I've got maybe already a handful of students that have finished the course and given me great feedback, and it sounds like everyone's really enjoyed it. And it's hopefully just a more direct way to learn about Dynamo, Python, the API. And I do have a roadmap over on the platform too, which will tell you what other courses I'm developing in the background and also my content. But at the moment, I've got a few things lined up, like a Revit family course that I'm working on, which will hopefully be a really thorough Revit creation of families course, and then a Rhino Inside course after that, because my YouTube content for Rhino Inside is super out of date. Unfortunately, fortunately, they've worked on the platform a lot, which means it's changed, but unfortunately, it means my videos don't really line up to it anymore. And then from there, I'll continue with another Dynamo course for model managers, Grasshopper for feasibility studies, and then probably a model management focused course, which will sort of look at both Revit, but also the professional skill set that model managers typically need. So all sorts of stuff going on. There's a community that you can access if you sign up to any of the courses or the content, so you can talk to people there. But yeah, it's definitely doing really well. It's been a nice sort of business avenue. So that's that one. And then the YouTube channel will continue. So I've been on a break for probably about a month and a half now, because I've just been so busy. So a lot of people have reached out and asked if I'm okay, and I'm alive, I'm doing well. I'm just too busy to produce YouTube videos, unfortunately. Probably the Dynamo course was the main reason. This took a lot of work to set up. It's a lot of recordings. Manually doing 8 languages of subtitles using a whole bunch of conversion tools was pretty fun. But I'm glad that other people can access it. And the channel in the new year, I'll probably be looking more at pyRevit. Also focusing again back on practical model management advice, because I've noticed that there is like a gap in the market generally for understanding what good model management entails. And then also returning to Dynamo, but maybe covering some more specific workflows that I've had requested in the past. So hopefully 1 to 2 videos a week. And yeah, that's probably most of my year lined up. I've got a bunch of clients ready to jump in the new year with as well. So it's all looking very busy again. Might potentially be moving to a different state. We'll see how we go. So might be going back to my home state depending on how the stars align, because Sydney's real estate is insanely expensive. I know Canada's not far behind in the Sydney affordability scale, at least in Toronto. So yeah.
Yeah, no, actually, in Quebec, we're pretty lucky. Montreal is
Oh,
starting
great.
to get crazy, but here in Quebec City, it's still pretty
It's
affordable.
still pretty affordable.
Pretty
So
lucky. I don't know if it's kind of the language thing because we're mostly speaking French, so that's maybe there's less international investors because of that. I'm not sure
maybe.
exactly what is the reason, but it's still pretty affordable.
Oh, that's good, because in Sydney the median house price is over 1.5 million Australian dollars, which is roughly
insane.
I think it's 1.3 Canadian roughly. So
Yeah.
it's absurd. Like it's not attainable anymore. Property is now for
That-
people
that
that
is
already have
insane.
property. so I've sort of given up on Sydney in that regard. And it's
Yeah,
not
I don't know what
really
the median house. It's probably like 300 to 400,000 Ks here, so it's still pretty good. Yeah, but people are still complaining it's expensive. But
It's crazy knowing there are cities in the world I could just move to and buy a house outright with no debt behind me. Oh, fun. But back home in Adelaide, my hometown, it's maybe 700, 800. You can get a 2-story place for if you're not too close to the city. So whereas in Sydney, you'll get a dilapidated shed for about $1.5 million, and then you'll get outbid for $3 million at the last second. So, but that's sort of my year in a nutshell, I guess. So, but it'll probably all change. It always does. So,
yeah. I
How about
see.
yourself?
So what it in the chat asks. Let me jump back. If you're more making techno with that keyboard.
Mostly classical. I'm very rusty on the keyboard. I do prefer weighted keys, and the one I have here doesn't have weighted keys, so I hopefully might get back on the keys eventually if I can get a new model. This is a pretty old Roland BK5 model, I think it is. So I'm hoping to upgrade and get some weighted keys. But yeah, mostly classical. I do play a lot of video game soundtrack songs. So
Really? That's
really
cool.
enjoyed Nintendo, so I can smash out a lot of Zelda songs and have a bit of fun with it. But I might chuck a ditty on the channel one day for fun.
Out of topic, but do you have a kind of a favorite game, movie, or TV show of the year?
So, of the year, that just changed. I was about to say, and then I'm like, oh, that changed. I mean, TV show is tricky. I mean, movie, do you mean released this year or just saw this year? Or
Yeah, I don't know. Anything you've been up to recently?
yeah, I mean, my favorite movie I saw recently was it was actually made in 1999, I think, and it's called Dark City. And it was made like just before The Matrix.
Yeah.
And it's very similar in its focus, but I actually liked it probably more than The Matrix. The Matrix is one of my favorite movies of all time, up there with The Dark Knight and a few other, quintessential basic bro nerd movies. But like, I just loved the visual style, the story, and the way that the story unravels was very different to The Matrix, but it had a lot of existential considerations that The Matrix raises too. So I was very just blown away by the fact that it got missed so easily by everyone, and including me. So I really did like that. TV shows
Dark
harder. I
City.
haven't actually watched
The
Dark City.
names rings a bell.
Yeah.
I never saw it, so
Yeah, Dark City. It was definitely a sleeper.
I'll add it to my list.
Yeah, but it came out just before The Matrix. You definitely have to
Interesting.
give it like about 10 to 15 minutes before it's like, okay, this is a good movie. Because the first 10 to 15 minutes are a little odd. And I do recommend skipping the first 2 or 3 minutes, because for some reason they give away huge plot points before the movie starts. And it's like, I would have much rather the whole movie was just a mystery and how they unravel it. But at the start, they just say a few plot points and you're like, whoa, like you didn't need to tell me that. Like I could have figured that out as I went. So I definitely
right.
recommend that's how you view it.
So
Yeah,
I'm
games.
sharing. This is
My favorite game is
Dark City.
probably a controversial one. It's the remake of Diablo 2. Super
Yeah.
controversial choice because there were so many issues with the release. Like the servers were down for 2 weeks. Everyone was going insane, and Blizzard is obviously a very controversial company as well. They've had a lot of harassment lawsuits, things like that. So I don't really like them as a company. But having been a big fan of Diablo 2 as a kid, it was great to just go back down nostalgia lane and do some barrel runs.
Yeah.
So I did quite like that. Yeah.
I think my favorite is probably the first Diablo game, though.
Oh, the first one, you're an OG guy. They had no run tool there. I tried playing it and you can't run. I'm like, oh, like it's
Yeah,
so
I
slow.
think it's a nostalgia thing, but I think it's
Yeah,
the
I
one,
played it too. Yeah, I
not
remember being
gameplay wise,
terrified.
but
Yeah.
atmosphere wise. I think
Oh
it's
yeah,
the
yeah.
one with the best atmosphere, in my
I
opinion.
was absolutely terrified of the butcher when he goes
Yeah,
like,
the
oh,
butcher.
fresh meat or whatever. It's
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
oh.
and he's hard. He's really hard to kill.
Oh yeah, yeah, hits like a truck. I remember running away and running back to town after that, and not playing for like a couple of weeks when I heard that.
Yeah, he's really scary, and he goes fast, and you cannot
Oh yeah,
outrun
yeah,
him.
yeah. It's a brutal difficulty curve, but Diablo 2 was like a fairly faithful remake, which is pretty rare these days. They actually maintained everything and just gave it a graphic uplift
Yeah,
and
yeah,
added some
yeah.
quality of life
I've tried it
features.
a little bit.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But yeah. But otherwise, TV series. I don't watch a great deal of TV shows actually. I'm trying to think
Yeah,
if any
me
really stood
neither.
out to me.
Not
I
recently.
mean, I'm currently working my way through Dexter, which I quite enjoy. It's an interesting show. It's getting a little stale. I'm around season 7, and every series is starting to follow a bit of a formula.
Is it
But I find that
is seven? Is the are they in the newest season? They didn't make
we're
a
up to
new one
9 or
recently.
10 at the moment. Yeah, so I burnt through the first 5 seasons during the first lockdown, and then just came back to it recently. And it's a fun show. The actors are really good. But yeah, TV series. I don't watch a great deal of TV. How about you? What are your big 3? TV, movie.
I don't know. Like, I'm not sure if I have a big TV show, but I've mentioned in my post my favorite movie this year was Dune.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
still haven't seen it. It looks pretty good though.
it's really good, yeah. But this kind of sci-fi that has some action, but is also as interesting themes as well. I think Blade Runner
Yeah.
2049 was great in that regard as
Oh
well.
yeah, I like that one. Yeah, they sort of get world building sort of right.
Exactly,
don't they?
yeah.
They immerse you in the world, sort of gradually, bit by bit. They say words that you don't understand until you start understanding what's going on. Yeah. Because I read the book for June, and God, it was confusing. The first chapter, I had no idea what I was reading, and then you start picking up pieces, and yeah, cool.
And for games, I think it was released last year, but Hades pretty much blew my mind last year. The art direction
Hades is
is
cool.
amazing. So I
Pretty
haven't.
hard though, right?
Yeah, but it's a roguelike, which I like. I don't know, for some reason I like doing the same thing over and over again these days. Because whenever I try to play a game that is like a long story and you have it's too much time for me. I don't have that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
So for me, it has to be like I can play game in 20 minutes or so.
Good thing about roguelike, I guess, yeah, you can pick it up, put it down, and start again.
Exactly,
Like I think
yeah.
my favorite, like, it's not really roguelike. It's like I think they call them souls likes, where they're really hard, but they're like well made. Have you played Hollow Knight? I played that one last year.
Did I play
That was
that?
probably my game of 2020. It would have been. It
Oh,
was
okay,
definitely
yeah.
Hollow Knight. Yeah. That's a Souls like though, which is like Dark Souls inspired. Super hard, but like super fun.
Yeah, I've
Yes,
played
yeah,
Dark
yeah.
Souls, but I didn't finish it.
I don't think
Like,
many of us have.
yeah, it's a funny game. You never know if am I going the right place because I keep getting destroyed. Perhaps I should go elsewhere. You're never too sure what you're supposed to do.
Hey, you just gotta wall through it. I saw someone mention the new Spider-Man movie. That looks pretty cool, doesn't it? I'm still on the fence of like they'd better include Tobey Maguire, and I don't really care if they include Andrew Garfield. Sort of, that's my camp for that one. Yeah.
All right, so I think we should wrap it up. I didn't mention my plan for the new year. Well, I've got a few landing gigs going on for early. What's interesting in Quebec is that they have a government program where they will repay some of the firms for the transition to Industry 4.0. So basically, they're paying for the BIM tool. So it creates a lot of work for BIM consultants, and there's not enough BIM consultants for all the work there is. So having enough work is not an issue for sure. And I've got a few things lined up with that. And then the live show is going to be a big part of the first part of the year because it's definitely a highlight of the year for me. It's been so much fun because I've realized my knowledge is at some limit, and I'd rather bring people with knowledge in specific areas. And I learned something from all the guests, and I've got lots of amazing guests lined up for next season.
Yeah, you
So-
had me at John Pearson, so
Yeah. And with Bill Carney, he has a course on LinkedIn Learning with Dynamo for interior design. It's pretty amazing. Some use of Dynamo I haven't seen before, explained in pretty simple way, and he uses mostly out of the box nodes. He
Okay.
managed to make it work, which
Nice, nice.
I've enjoyed.
Well, that's good. They
And
definitely need more Dynamo on LinkedIn Learning. Some of the courses are a bit old now, so I still see people doing Dynamo 1.3 courses, and that was like 4 years ago. It's like, come on, LinkedIn Learning,
yeah,
delete it.
I do have a final question before we get going. So, how was
Hmm.
it? I've been researching ISO, the new ISO norm,
Oh yeah,
19650. Can you tell me about it? Because it's not really used here in
fun, isn't it?
Quebec, but
Yeah,
I've been
it's
trying
a
to
funny
understand what
standard.
it's about.
It's mostly about process and how data is meant to be shared amongst parties on a project. It's sort of like a guidance framework in some regards, in that it tries to identify who is fulfilling which role on a team and when information should be exchanged, what format it's in. It's really there to guide people to just do the right thing, I guess, by their client and each other. It doesn't really cover technical things. Like, a lot of people mistake the naming convention of I think it's the British National Annex for part of the ISO standard, where it has like the containers and the names
Hmm.
of the, you've got level, zone, all those things. Whereas really it's more about process. It talks about all the control documents that are meant to facilitate that, like the master information delivery plan, task information delivery plan. But I guess that the hard thing with the ISO is it's such a big change for most people to use, because it does require a lot of things out of a lot of people that wouldn't usually do a lot. The biggest barrier I see to it is actually usually with clients, because it actually requires the clients to do something. It asks them, what data do you need? What
Hmm.
documents do you need? And here's like a report, like a EIR or employer information requirement you need to fill out. And often that's just like like, this doesn't make my job easier because I have to do something. So like it's a big barrier for everyone to mentally overcome. I
Hmm.
think as an ISO, it's already sort of lost its ability to be shared with people. That's one challenge with it too. So a lot of people just don't buy it, or they
Yeah,
won't buy
because you
like the
have to pay with it.
updates.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so I appreciate that a lot of people have put time and effort into the British standards that influence the ISO and the ISO itself. So to make it free sort of devalues their service, but at the same time, the amount of money being lost in this process not being understood by the industry is probably like way more. So it's a difficult one to assess, how successful it's been outside the UK, because obviously the UK, it's all mandated anyway,
Hmm.
so everyone has to buy it. But so that they're probably loving it over there because everyone just has to buy it. Maybe if like they've had subsidy programs for it, like it's just subsidized depending on your firm scale. Like maybe the Architects Institutes could subsidize the use of it, for example. I'm always bashing away at the Architect Institutes for not really doing a lot. Maybe those registration fees could be turned back around into something productive like that, rather than just big shiny architecture awards. But at the same time, it's a challenging standard. It does require a lot of reading, a lot of understanding, and if you think BIM has a lot of acronyms, brace yourself. Like ISO
Yeah.
is full of them. So
Yeah, no, I
yeah,
started to dig into it, and
mm,
the
very yeah, EIR,
and everything.
which used to be the CIR, and
Uh-huh.
also we've got the MIDP, TIDP, P revisions, C revisions. I think they're and suitability codes. It's there's a lot to
Hmm.
absorb, and one of the biggest challenges is that the platforms we use to author don't really speak to the ISO processes very much. Whether it's the revisioning system in Revit, which still can't deliver the ISO standard even after the changes they made to it, because of the sub-revisioning system, or the increased dependence or encouragement towards IFC. There are definitely still a lot of mismatches between various platforms and what the ISO requires or expects. ArchiCAD, for example, is closer, but can an engineer use it? For example, there's all sorts of challenges to consider. Can a fabricator use it? A fabricator's even using BIM. Like, there's all sorts of hurdles that sort of need to be overcome to properly follow it. But I guess for now, it's just the step forward we've got is really the way I look at it. Because what's the alternative, really? Just sit there and keep sending DWGs to people in the hope that they'll maybe build a fabrication model or a manufacturer's model. It's there's still a lot of realistic barriers that haven't been overcome. And even in the UK, they've mandated it, but a lot of people still don't follow it properly. It's one of those things where you can say one thing and do another, I guess. Yeah, but it's
Yeah, I
better than
think
nothing.
what I'm seeing is that clients and building owners are quite confused with BIM, and they
Mm, mm.
they might look at something like ISO to help them, but it's pretty confusing if you don't know what's going on. So it's I've been digging into it, that kind of bureaucracy aspect of BIM. I know that there's a service called Plannerly that has like BIM execution plans and templates like that.
Great. You're right. There's a lot of bureaucracy emerging in BIM, and I guess it does. I feel it's happening because there are more and more people that don't know how to author BIM that are getting involved in BIM because they're running out of ground to stand on. And I've worked with a lot of people like it that really get super hands-on involved in the process of BIM, but when it comes to actually making it work, they're nowhere to be found. They're in meetings or something like that, and there's a lot of bureaucracy. If I compare how we used Revit, like say 10 years ago to now, like not a great deal has really changed, but the way that we talk about process has changed a lot. So it's like there's this disconnect between those two environments, and I do hope to see more people reach down as well as reach up to the way BIM is used in companies. And I guess our job as consultants is partially to bridge that gap as well. I've had a lot of clients that I've helped understand the ISO requirement or which things they need to change to meet it, but at the same time I've seen a lot of clients and just flat out reject it once they understand it as well. So
I guess part of these documents are like contractual obligations.
And if so it's mandated, it has to be.
They're written in a very lawyerly way, so a very contractual way. So it's not really meant for the end users. But I've seen some clients give us like BIM execution plans on their side, but they don't know anything about the software, so they don't even understand the documents themselves. Like maybe a few aspects.
There's like two approaches that I think work really well. That aren't necessarily globally, suitable. But like the best I've seen is one is like companies that actually in-house develop their own software solutions to piece all this stuff together into something they need. Like for example, Willow Twin is a platform that a company called Investor has invested in. I don't think the name's connected, but like they've effectively just said, we're going to in-house everything, but we have a digital specialist that supports us internally and everything does what it's meant to do, and our facilities managers get what they need. So you just say, bugger it, we're going to make it work. Even if it's not the way that the guy next door does it to us, at least it works. Unlike the guy next door using Excel or something like that. So that's one way to go about it. And the other one is to at least pick a group of people you collaborate with, either as projects or as a collective. For example, our health department and our transport department work quite closely together in understanding their digital frameworks and building upon them. So at least they have like some homogenization across departments because they actually reach out to each other, because there's so much bureaucracy in the background with most organizations as it is. So even getting like something approved or a business case sent forward is like such an ordeal in itself. And then if you add interdepartmental relationships in government, it's just like it's a whole nother ball game. So like that's sort of the two ways I've seen have the most success. Just when clients are specific about what they need. Maybe it's not the ISO, sure, but like at least like know, if you want 4 columns of data and that's what you care about in the project, like make sure your team's producing them. Like, you at least need to pick what matters and fight the battles. Otherwise you're going to get 5,000 columns and you don't need any of them.
Yeah. Like so some of the things I see, and I'm not too sure how useful it is. It's a client sending like LOD requirements, like, for every subcategory. And with it's like, I don't think
it's just like such a pain.
I'm not too sure about that whole LOD thing, because professionals should know how much they should model, unless there's a really specific requirement for some reason for fabrications or something else. But if it's kind of a regular project, usually professionals should know how much they should detail,
exactly. Right? I wish that LOD was just level of data. I mean, we have level of information now, or LOIN, level of information needed, which is sort of our refocusing of LOD, because I feel like LOD never really got past the geometry point, and Revit sort of confused everyone by adding the detail levels and going, oh, should we model like everything 3 times and have different detail levels associated to it? And it's like, well, if it's already there, no, just switch it to fine, who cares? Like, but it's just like the data is really what LOD was all about. Like what are we using it for, and how suitable is it for that purpose? So I think like that was the biggest trap with LOD that the whole industry fell into. I think even I used to be on the band camp of that doesn't look detailed enough, and it's like, yeah, but why does it matter? Like,
exactly,
detect it still. Like it's like that's the point of LOD. And I feel like the AIA specification which is what everyone tends to go back to. Whilst it was a handy reference, it did definitely probably get a little bit too focused on the graphical aspect of what LED looks like, and people skimmed over the data aspects, which are really what mattered, I guess. And people didn't even understand that LED 500 can be LED 300 with more data. Like, it doesn't have to be like fabrication models or fabrication components. Like, I've handed over models at LED 500 before that are just LED 300 with data dumped in and a few things moved to where they were actually installed on site. And they go, oh, this doesn't look like a LED 500. And I'm like, well, you might want to look at the schedules and the database, and it is. Like, so there was definitely a lot of misconception in that field. But I see a lot of people just moving away from LED out of frustration as well, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, well, in theory, there's like all these Excel spreadsheets that in some projects people expect you to update them, but like nobody seems to like these charts actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's where Dynamo is great, because you can just construct those sheets automatically whenever you want. Like, I use Dynamo quite a lot for clients.
Really, for LDs? Oh, interesting.
Oh, just for export of specific data sets that a schedule can't easily construct like as easily, like or you just want to press a button and here's your file when you're alone, like, sort of thing. Like, you give a tool to like an architect. Like, I've developed tools for architects to help them just deal with their clients. Like, give them what they need whenever they need it, rather than, sure, we'll get it to you by the end of the week. It's like, sure, I'll get it to you in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So like that's sort of the focus. Or even just pushing into Speckle, or like somewhere where you don't even have to send them a file. You just say, oh, F5 the web page, and there it is. Like, just refresh. And I think the future of BIM is definitely like going to be more web focused, because like we can just pass data around and add it together using common element IDs, and that's probably the future of BIM.
So many things to check out. I'm trying to spend at least like 5 hours a week, like just researching and learning.
Definitely a good idea. I have 1 day of R&D every week is my rule. I force myself to research one day a week.
That's great. Yeah.
And work for. Yeah.
All right. So I think it's past 9:30 here, so it's time to wrap it up. But that was a lot of fun. You know what? I think we should do it every year. Wrap up the BIM year each year. What do you think?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I mean, there'll be more to talk about next year and the year after that, and I'm definitely hanging around in BIM for a very long time. So, yeah, more than happy. And I'm sure next year you'll have done like, I think you've done about half a year of consulting right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. And
I started in March. Yeah, but as I've mentioned, my main area is still building courses. It's a very long process for me. I kind of
there's only so many things you can do, and you've got a family too. I'm still, just with a partner.
Exactly. I'm trying, generally speaking, not to work more than roughly 40 hours. It might change every week, every once in a while, but really I'm not working 60 hours I was earlier on.
Oh yeah, to begin with, I was doing like 90-hour weeks. It's ridiculous. Like, I just burnt myself out in my first 2 weeks, I think. But yeah, you pick up that momentum over time. But I guess in a year's time, you would have been consulting roughly the same amount of time that I would have been. So it'll be interesting to sort of trade experiences and see how you found it. And we can probably recap on all the changes coming in BIM across the year. There's more to come for sure.
All right, interesting comments. People saying the future of BIM is internet space to store data and geometry.
Dark web.
The dark web BIM. All right, so I think we'll wrap it up quickly. The next episode of this, the third season of Revit Pure Live with Bill Carney on January 5th at 3 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it's 3 p.m. I will announce it in the future, so stay tuned. Meanwhile, thank you so much, Gavin. That was a lot of fun. Really interesting insights. Great to hear from you as always. And so you'll get on with your days, and for me, taking a shower and going to bed.
Well, thanks for having me on board. I really appreciate it, and thanks for everyone that watched. And feel free to reach out in future.
All right, so thanks everybody. Thanks for the great activity in the chat. Always nice to hear from you. Have a great year. Have a happy holiday season. Have a happy new year. And I'll see you back on January 5th. So see you again later. Bye.